Hello, how are you?
How are you?
Hanging in there. How are you doing?
I'm great.
Good. Come on in.
Hello.
Hello, how are you?
Expressive typography.
Yeah.
Sounds scary.
Fun.
So yesterday, so your mistake that you did was I live in Tempe.
Oh.
Yeah. But then next time maybe you can just text like a day before so that we.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, because I also like to go, but I saw it like literally 20 minutes before you're gonna leave.
Yeah. What was your recommendation?
Like you text like a day before so that
Yeah.
maybe someone.
Or like
I didn't
few hours.
anticipate to be there, so that's why I sent it. I had to go and meet with one of my printers. And I had some time between one meeting and the next, so I just threw it in there just to see.
Oh, okay. What are you saying? So.
What's that? I'm sure there will be another day.
After class. Yeah. It's gonna be a long story.
Long.
Well, not that one, like a,
The long
like,
ones.
like a 10 minutes.
Okay, fair enough.
15 minutes long.
Oh.
You just stay at home.
Yeah, not that. How was the weekend?
It was good. How about yours?
Pretty good. I think I got at least 25% on my midterm.
Oh, good.
Because it's multiple choice, so the minimum is 25%.
Oh, you don't?
True. Are you talking about the HSE one?
No, I'm not in your class.
Oh, okay.
I'm in another SSC that's like stats.
Got it.
I would love to be in your class though. It
Yeah.
sounds more fun. At least no math.
It's a good
Or
time.
less math.
I wouldn't say no math. There was plenty of math in that midterm.
But like not like stats. Right?
Yeah. I have to do stats next semester, so I'm not looking forward to it.
But,
Yeah, stats is not fun.
Yeah, but usually the paper比较难录 around November 1st.
Hello.
Just had a campaign a lot.
Very
Yeah.
nice.
The
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Makes a big noise. I probably says. And I don't have. Make the big noise. I think those guys they cannot sleep. They cannot hear.
Here's snakes. You got snakes, huh? Oh, we do. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Snakes. Which one? And what time is what time is snake today? Is Saturday? Oh,
No, bro, she ran outside, spun around, and snakes went around.
if they curse snakes, you find out something. Okay, I said this girl outside. Take my phone.
Okay, that was a caveat. That's what they were.
I was like, oh my God, so brave. Is that what I
Oh my God.
I was asking.
Oh shit.
Oh yeah, you go to like a snake option. Oh, nice, nice. Thank you. I let it go on there. Tell me what.
Let me go.
As long as it's not my laptop.
Don't
sit.
Everything. Yeah. Yeah, okay, that no.
No, I didn't get Apple.
I used to have an Apple Care because Costco like includes it.
Oh,
Well, like you pay like I think like 20% or something if you buy it with the cheaper with that Apple Care on like it's like 1 to 2 years. I forgot. It was the 2-year one. But I buy everything in Costco. Costco, my pants from Costco, my glasses are Costco, like my phone, Costco, I don't want to spend money.
Because I was gonna play my so I know what it's
That's the, I used to have yours were yours. My car is old.
You ready to get the show on the road?
Okay, so you managed
We've got a lot to cover today, so I want to go ahead and get started. As you can see by the name on the slide, we are going to be going into expressive typography today. A lot of you have reached out about a little bit concerned about Lab 4.3, so I wanted to just reiterate. Originally, Lab 4.3 wasn't due until Wednesday due to Canvas and all that stuff. I just moved it out to Friday. So we still had time no matter what to go over this, but I pushed it out just to be safe. That said, we wrapped up before fall break. Oops, hang on a second. Sorry. Before fall break, we wrapped up by talking about typography in terms of anatomy, as well as typography in terms of hiring. right? So now we're gonna look at typography in terms of its expressiveness. We've all said that typography has a mood. And I think that that is probably one of the most important things, and really what 4.3 is designed to teach you guys, is what that typographic mood, what that typographic expression is, and really what you're capable of doing with typography almost exclusively. Okay? So we're going to be combining typographic hierarchy as well as typographic anatomy today, and then taking it one step further. But before we do that, I just want to show you guys a quick video. We may not watch the whole thing. I'm just going to sort of switch over and we'll watch that. I have to do some quick setup, so give me just a moment. Oops.
This is me on a stroll a few days ago. During this walk, I noticed something, so I started taking pictures of it. Eventually, I got my coworkers to join in. Mac took this picture, and Agnes took this one. Well,
Sorry guys, for those online, it was really quiet here in class, so I'm actually just gonna push it to Canvas as a separate link and you guys can watch it there. Yep. The joy of running 2 Zoom sessions at once. I apologize, guys. So I'll post that link to Canvas. That way you guys can watch that a little bit later. One of the main things that that video points out is typography as a physical body, something that is what language looks like, right? And different languages have different forms of typography, right? Typography is really just a tool that we can do things with, okay? Things like shaping content or giving meaning to something. When we get towards the end of the class, I'll talk a little bit about semiotics, and those are some of the meanings that we can craft not just with typography, but through symbolism. So it takes it one step further, but right now, typography is a tool that you can do things with. Things like shaping content, things like giving meaning to something, or giving language that physical body that we were talking about. And we interact with typography in different ways every single day. In the video, you guys all have seen Cooper Black somewhere. The video really shows sort of the ubiquity of Cooper Black. It is probably one of the most prominent fonts, even across Phoenix, maybe not even just across the world, right? Same thing with Trajan. You see Trajan in a lot of like video movie posters, right? And the way in which we use typography really just enables the social flow of messages. Cooper Black is a really nicely rounded piece of typography. It's not a bubble font, but it's very bubbly, right? It makes it useful for almost anything in any of the situations that you apply it to. So it got a rap for being really sort of an advertising font. You could see it from yards, feet, meters away. Right? But if you use typography in the wrong context, it can suddenly start to alter the meaning of what that communication is trying to say. Okay. So typography is not really a new concept. We've all interacted with it in some way, shape, or form. Hieroglyphs and cuneiform are some of the earliest forms of typography or really pictographic communication. It's not quite typography, but one of the earlier forms of communication that date back to about 3000 BCE. By the 1600 BCE, we learned in the history of design lecture that the Phoenicians then took sort of this very early form of Western lettering and developed what are called phonograms, words that look like they sound, basically. Or really, they're just symbols. That's it. They're symbols that represent the spoken word. Okay? And then the Phoenicians, or in other words, the Greeks, are sort of credited with taking that early symbolism and modifying it and creating the first alphabet around 1000 BCE. And then after several years, the Romans took it up. They sort of took and adapted the Greek and Phoenician alphabets, added uppercase styling and lowercase styling, which we still all, for the most part, use today, depending on the area of the world you're from. Even from there, typography sort of evolved during the Middle Ages to be something more of a craft. They were very well illustrated manuscripts, right? A single monk might spend their entire life creating several, maybe even just one book. So it was very much a craft and art form. And then sort of along came the printing press, which very much modernized the way in which we look at typography. It sort of created a new medium of typography. Movable type sort of course, was the turning point for the modern world and how we're still using print today. And then by the Industrial Revolution, typography was about communicating to the masses, right? So typography as we know it today wasn't really rationalized until about the mid-century, right? Graphic designers these days have the luxury of the tools that we're using in this class, right? I'm gonna pull it back in my day. We're gonna do what we did back in my day today. We're gonna kind of do it the old school way. We're gonna go back to hand lettering typography a little bit. But what I want you guys to see as we do the exercise later today is sort of how the programmatic thinking behind the softwares that you guys are ultimately using comes into play. How do you look at the spacing when you're being meticulous about it by hand? Okay, so we'll get there. But before we do that, let's start talking about type as a program, right? Because you can think about typography in many, many different ways. And when you think about type as a program, which is effectively the way that type functions today in the modern world, we are all working with programmed typefaces, right? The type functions or responds to a new digital environment. We didn't have that back when we were working with the printing press. So a great example of type being sort of expressed as a program would be something like this. This clearly looks digital, right? New Alphabet was a typeface that was designed in 1967, and it was designed by Wim Cruel, who responded to the rise of electronic communication back in the 60s, late 60s. What's interesting about this bit of typography is that it sort of rejects the centuries of typographic convention, right? It's really doing away with anything that we've seen up until this point. You still have counter spaces, but you don't have like the intricacies of serifs, or, I mean, you might even look at, sure, it's a sans serif bit of typography, but it wouldn't really fit into any of the classifications that we've set up previously. It's where that other category kind of comes into play. And it has a very specific use case. If you take this out of the context of a digital environment, it sort of becomes a little awkward to look at, right? And I do believe this was selling software. So I'm not sure what, but it is also difficult to read. So yeah, there's that. Yeah.
Is it because trying to use the little like 8 like
not
thing?
Quite. This is sort of a predecessor to that. I know what you're talking about. It's the pill-shaped typography. That's coming. We'll get there. These letters were actually designed to be displayed on what's called a CRT display, cathode ray tube display. Those are just video screens where curves and angles were a little bit hard to render because the way that the screen renders is just in horizontal lines. So you wouldn't be able to get the intricacies of something nice and rounded like Poppins, let's say. Even Futura might have been a little bit difficult to display because everything is rendered horizontally. Another great example would be Zuzana Leko, who designed typefaces that really just exploited the pixelated nature of early desktop systems, right? Rather than trying to, I don't know, impose a more rigid grid structure to screens that wouldn't be able to render that, this designer just kind of leaned into the more pixelated nature of screens at the time. And it sort of, or really just embraced the language of the program at the time, really. So again, just thinking of type as a program. Rather than trying to force it to do something that it wasn't really designed to do. Right? And then by the early 90s, the introduction of much higher resolution laser printers sort of necessitated a slightly cleaner font, right? We could have a little bit of a cleaner output. Our displays were still a little janky, but our printers were a little bit higher quality for more at-home use, right? Or at office, really, at the time. So font technologies like PostScript were developed. It's a little before my time, but really what PostScript was designed to do was sort of create an environment where designers weren't so restricted by the lower resolution outputs at the time. So PostScript just kind of added some more pixels to the bunch, really, is a good way to think about it. And then things like this spun the rise of the internet and just sort of continued the relevance of pixel-based fonts or pixel-based typography going forward. And it leads us to fonts that are like Helvetica, right? You can see that these are also kind of built out of pixels, but you have more refinement out of them. And then sort of carrying this on a little bit further, you can actually get a little bit more nuanced details in certain areas of typography, right? You still retain a little bit of that legibility. Digital design tools began to support, by the later 90s, they began to support vector drawings over raster drawings. So PostScript was entirely raster, whereas by the late 90s, you could start introducing vector typography. So you can get a little bit more fine detail out of things like this. Switching gears a little bit to talking about type as a narrative. How can we tell a more narrative story with the typography that we choose? When you look at this typeface, what sort of comes to mind? What's happening here, first of all?
Blurs and dashes both for the typeface.
It's kind of a,
Your serif and sans serif
Makes
mix.
sense.
yeah, so this is a little bit of an odd typeface. So take a look at the name up at the top, it's called Dead History. So what is literally happening? Think about one word, or better yet, one person, fictional person. What is happening with these letters? They're being Frankensteined. So if I wrote a headline for Frankenstein in something like a typeface called Dead History, you start to get a narrative that you're telling with that typeface. You are literally putting pieces of typographic bodies together to create a Frankenstein font. Now you're telling a story. You're telling a narrative with the typography alone, right? What's going on here? Something a little bit different. This one sort of mixes what we were talking about earlier of type as program and type as a narrative. It's kind of doing two things. This typeface was developed by Dutch typographers. Their name is Eric van Bloken. I might have said that wrong. Please correct me if you know better. And another guy, his name is Just van Rossum. Again, I accept corrections if I say people's names wrong. They were the first designers, or really better yet, the first typographers to combine the roles of designer and programmer. And together they built or really created typefaces that embrace change and uncertainty. This is literally a program typeface. What does this look like? It's kind of,
Gets scratched out.
it kind of looks like the typeface that like ChatGPT would put out if you prompted it in an image to write type. It's kind of what you get. And that's because it's programmed. And programmed languages are really good at seeing consistencies. They're good at seeing patterns, right? So when you end up with some weird stuff up here, I mean, think about it. These are all caps up here. What do you see less of in written word? Less capitals, right? So the program is just a little less familiar with reading this than it is with reading this. And then it kind of falls apart a little bit, comes back together, and then falls apart again. Because the program is trying to identify a pattern that it doesn't quite know how to output yet, right? This will get better over time, but this is a typeface called Beowulf. And it is literally a series of randomized outlines that are programmed to come together as typography. So it's kind of cool. And then sort of the most interesting one, if you ask me, which is why we're going to spend a little bit more time on it, is type as a concept, right? Who's ever looked at an ad or a photo or even just a logo and said, oh, I see what they did there. That's really clever. I every time I see something, I have like a visceral response. It's like, oh my God, that's so cool. Nerd things. Thinking about type as a larger concept or using typography to express or represent an idea or represent more than just the words that it's saying, that's what I'm talking about. Okay, so let's look at some examples. Herb Lugalin was one of the best examples of expressive typographers. Unfortunately, he's passed away, but he has genuinely left behind one of the best examples, the largest samples of typography solely as a concept. So in this first example, instead of illustrating this figure with a big burly beard, he instead created a typeface that curls and weaves and acts like a beard, right? Any guesses as to what this is an advertisement for?
Aftershave or something?
A barber. So it's an advertisement for a barber shop. Pretty cool, huh? Who obviously trims and shapes beards. Okay. Give you a second. That one? What is this advertising? Any guesses?
Children products, like baby formula.
So this one is obviously a headline that is for an article about abortion. Whether or not that article is for or against abortion, you can't tell by this headline, right? But he has literally used nothing but typography. The child inside the mother's womb, the O, is just an ampersand.
So what?
Ampersand? So that's the and symbol. Sometimes you'll see it like that. But it sort of emulates a child inside of a mother's womb, right? You can look at that and it doesn't require any thought, maybe beyond a couple of seconds, to sort of make the connection of what it's doing, right? It's very literally taking simple letter forms, not so simple, but simple letter forms, no custom shapes, that's how this typography is, and just being very mindful about how we assemble it and how we show it and how we put the words together. I think this is every designer's first step. I think we've all hopefully moved beyond this simple approach, but it's an option, right? And here it works, right? You're literally bringing two things together. It's like a marriage would. I think there's some more creative options that could happen here, but this works. Here's one. What's this an advertisement for? An optician who sells glasses, right? This is actually for a Parisian optometrist. And you get it, the O's look like glasses, right? These don't need explanation, they explain themselves, but when you really stop and look at it, you're like, oh, I get what they did there.
So are these like individual designs, or he made a whole new typeface for?
Individual designs. These are, for the most part, using stock typography, but manipulating them, modifying them slightly to, okay, you've got an L, O, okay, L a little larger, make the O, make the up, connect the O's, got it, right? Michael Beirut has a really, he's a partner at Pentagram in New York. He has a really great lecture that he does with Google where he talks about how his inspiration to become a graphic designer was that he was out with his dad one day and saw a forklift, and on the forklift was their logo, and it was the name of the forklift was the Clark forklift truck, and it was C-L-A, and the L was lifting up the A. It's like, oh, duh, right? The L is the forklift, right? So nothing super innovative here, right? But at the time, frankly, that Herb Lublin was doing this was kind of the first time this was done. So it was somewhat innovative back then. But now we see this everywhere. This is sort of the basis between Herb Lublin and probably Paul Rand. This is how we get modern branding, right? So super innovative for its time. This one doesn't even require a whole lot of anything, right? Sort of forcing the L to do something that maybe it wasn't designed to do, and then just adjusting the eyes a little bit. But for the most part, stock, right? This is just typography out of the printer. That's it. But it works perfectly. You understand that the two I's and the L are a family. Some of these can get a little bit more complex, but still interesting. Word dimension literally takes on shape itself, right? It has form, like we learned about early on in the class. Again, these are just really solid works of type as a concept. Okay, maybe a little bit harder. Here we have an example of something called a rotational ambiogram. If you turn it one way or the other, it still reads the exact same. With the exception of the green typography. But basically, it just says the same thing right side up or upside down. Yeah. Here, Herb Lublin was announcing the new year in 1972. But it says 69 was good, 72 was better. Pretty cool, huh? Okay, this one's fun. Not Herb Lublin. Or I'm sorry, no, this one is Herb Lublin, I apologize. Here, he just printed up the word cough, printed it out, ripped some holes into it, and used that to show how this cough medicine that he's selling helps to break up your cough. Again, sort of using this higher order thinking to help convey whatever it is that we're trying to communicate. This one might take a little bit longer for you to get to, but once you see it, you're like, oh, that's really clever, right? So that was all Herb Lublin's work. Now I want to show you one that I had done. This was back in college, so be kind, but there's also another video, and I'll throw it into Canvas, where Chip Kidd goes through and talks about book design. You guys are going to be doing magazine design, very similar, but what is that? It's hair. It's my hair. From my head. I was at the barbershop and I was like, don't touch it, and swept it up and took it home, and I started photographing it. And at the same time I did this, I also colored my hair for the first time. And so I made that. A poster about hair written in hair, right? This is kind of goofy, but it works. You get it. It communicates, right? So that is typography as a concept. Now, today, outside of that, let me make a couple of adjustments. Hang on a sec. Work in progress. Let me make a couple of adjustments here because I need to get the camera. Sorry guys, watch your eyes. Good morning. Up here at the front, you guys are welcome to, did anyone bring tracing paper by any chance? A couple of people? I have some here. I want you guys to get some practice under your belt with these. Go ahead and pass this around. You're welcome to just take one piece out for yourself. And then also come up and grab one of each of these. These are, I still want you guys to create your own and print out your own. But this is sort of what I'm looking for this particular lab, is I want you guys to print some of these out, and I'll explain why in a second. So go ahead and pass around the tracing paper. Grab one of, actually grab one from each pile. And then also grab a ruler. You'll need that, and hopefully a pencil if you brought one.
Thank you, brother.
Thank you.
I was working other stuff, so I was like,
So far.
Are they all like different?
when it comes to.
They got basketball over here. Like, they just do it, there was like. Because the geometry is this one is one.
No.
Oh, each page is a different type of spectrum. No. I don't have a.
Yes, yes.
Just two.
We're gonna see how good that was.
What's some both sides?
They're all different. That's what you want. Okay, I can hear you. You can choose whatever you like.
It's like a salon. Yeah. That's gonna be their music. Jumps out of like launch, then jump to salon. Obviously doesn't like it anymore.
Sounds so great.
And so it should work.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm
actually.
Yeah. Told us to get that.
Really quickly, here on the line, can you guys see the document camera with all the typefaces on it? Yeah.
Snake, can you give me a? You want a ruler?
You used to get beat with me.
That's busy.
Mom. I was like, what's up, brother?
Broken bones in his history.
That's T scale.
So the first time I see this.
This is used against the edge of the table, so you can always get out.
And you also like.
Yeah. If you piss him off today too much,
And this is for the right eye.
Yeah.
Right eye. Actually, there must be like those thick blue ones.
Out of curiosity, did anyone go to Catholic school? I was worried I might traumatize someone by bringing in rulers.
Yeah, this is just like. Is coffee nice?
Yeah. You can't help without soccer.
My dad said that his professor used to put a pencil between your fingers like this and then beat your hand really hard. Yeah, that's a new one.
All right, let's okay. Everyone can see that? Good? I chose the hard one. I want you guys to find several typeface variations, okay? 5 to 7 different ones. You guys will probably have 2 here. You use it as you see fit. There's an important part to this. You guys are creating a logo for a journal, and the journal is called Design Through the Decades. Okay? So you are not going to need all of these letters, but it is helpful to have all of the letters so that you can see some of the spacings, right? One of the things that I find exceptionally helpful, but that I didn't bring with me today, is a bit of masking tape. A bit of masking tape goes a very long way in keeping everything from not moving. So I would just recommend that once you guys are home, just don't use Scotch tape because that'll tear your paper. Just take a bit of masking tape, put it on your pant leg and pull it off so it's less sticky, and then just stick it to the top of here. That way it holds it down and you can still pick it up and move it. Here, I'm just gonna be a little bit sloppy. This is practice, okay? Personally, I find it a little bit easier to trace larger letters. So it's a little bit up to you as far as the size of the letters that you want to use. If you guys did go out and buy some tracing paper, you should have 50 sheets in there, so go nuts. The first thing, and it's helpful if you start with an idea in mind, right? For me, I know that I kind of want to start out with a nice drop cap of a D for design. And I want that D to kind of fall onto 2 lines of text. So if I'm making a quick sketch here, sorry, you guys can't see that. Something like that, right? I could probably be a little bit more creative. Maybe the D, let me move that. Maybe the design through the something like that. I don't know. It's a little long up here, a little short down here. One thing I would say to avoid is doing this. I would avoid doing that. That gets hard to read, right? So the idea here is to iterate several times. Just kind of get it out of your system. Don't touch a computer before you've done this. Because the computer is awfully limited, right? You guys are much more capable of doing things with these, las manos, than you are doing stuff in the computer, right? That's not to say you're not capable of computers. It's just to say that you're better than that. So the first step to this activity is to add, what is this called down here? Where I put the ruler?
Baseline?
Baseline, yes. So I would just recommend use your ruler to establish that baseline. Doesn't have to be overly perfect. But you want a straight line of some kind. You might end up having several if you have a multi-lined logo. There's an awful lot of words in this logo, so careful.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Is it okay to use a font that is just an outline?
Do you mean a font or a typeface?
Typeface.
Yes, but I would encourage you to think about the legibility because certain outline typefaces, really certain typefaces in general, if they're too thin, or they, honestly, this would make a horrible logo, what I'm doing here right now, because it's a little too detailed.
The intention is I want to fill some design inside.
If you want to embellish it a little bit further, I think that's fine. just again, watch the detail on something like a logo, because when you're designing a logo, you have to think about the size of that logo, both on the size of a billboard, as well as the size of a favicon, which is like 50 pixels. So you want that detail to be legible both at distance and at small sizes. Okay. So I've got my baseline here. I've already moved it around a little bit, so be careful. I also added a cap line. You probably won't need an X height because your X height's going to change as you add multiple typefaces. Everyone stop what you're doing and look at me really quick. If your logo has one typeface, you get an incomplete. You have to combine multiple typefaces. Ideally 2. You don't need more than 2, just 2 is good. But you want to combine those typefaces, you want to manipulate those typefaces. So I'm going to start with my D, and guys, this is elementary school. We're just going to trace. So I recommend be light in case you make a mistake. Now, notice something. I want everyone to watch what I'm doing up here really quick as I'm doing it. What did I do there?
Outline.
I outlined it, but what would you have done? How would you have outlined that?
I would just color you.
I'm being a little Socratic here. Notice that I'm not doing this. Sorry, I got stuck to the paper there. I'm going to switch the camera around really quick. Give me 1 second. There we go. Watch your eyes. Sorry. So to paint a broader picture there, I was doing this, not. Okay? You want that nice steady stroke. Okay? I can't tell you how frustrating it is to me. I have worked with several designers that are in there doing sketches like this. And it's like, dude, just fucking do it. Right? Don't pencil stitch it in. Okay? Just commit. Just like you were drawing. Has everyone seen SpongeBob? How does SpongeBob draw the circle? He just goes in a really quick line, right? It's not. There's nothing precious here. Okay, you want to be careful to get it accurate, but commit to the line that you're doing. Okay. Back to it. Let me switch it back.
Can you combine 2 typefaces by steal the element from it?
I want you to. Yeah, that's the point. So here, I'm going to finish out my D.
This is fancy. This is explaining my life.
Now, as you guys are doing this, I also want you guys to think about what typefaces go well together. It doesn't make any sense for you to take a sans serif typeface that is kind of a normal, maybe grotesque typeface and pair that with another sans serif grotesque typeface. Especially if they're largely indistinguishable from each other. If they're indistinguishable from each other, why do you have two typefaces? Just commit, right? Do one. So oftentimes good typeface pairings include a sans serif and a serif. So kind of creating, what would that be called? Think back to our design principles. Being a little Socratic today. Contrast, good job. Yeah, you're creating shape contrast, right? Sorry, I'm not very good at drawing and looking. So I'm going to be a bit of a bad host while I finish this. Okay, so I have a D there. If I move this out, you can see the D there, right? I'm purposefully leaving it unfilled, only because personally I find it a little bit easier when I bring this into Illustrator to leave it unfilled. That way I can see where I want my pen tool to be. Okay. Sorry guys, we're bringing back the pen tool for this one. once I've got this really nice drop cap D, I actually kind of do want an X height for this one for a couple of reasons. One, I want to have a nice space in my typography to break up the line, right? So that I can do my design through the decades, right? I want 2 lines with the D's. So I'm actually going to set that up. And this typeface doesn't even have lowercase letters. So that's it. I'm just going to make one of my own. Oftentimes the X height isn't exactly half. You don't want it to be quite half. You want it to be a little bit higher than that. So I'm just going to eyeball it, and it's going to be incredibly crooked, but who cares? This is practice. There we go. Actually, that was pretty good. Not gonna lie. And now I want to use this typeface. It's called Wanna Black. I'm going to choose a type, or a size rather, that kind of fits into that X height. Looks pretty good if you ask me. Yep. Now, something important to think about as you're doing this component of it is the spacing, right? So I'm actually gonna, or better yet, the kerning, right? The space that you have between each letter. A really good tip here is to think about each and every letter as if there's water in between, okay? And you want to balance out the water. You want to make the water even between each letter form. So that's a little bit of a subjective way to look at it. There's also a game online. I don't remember what it's called, but I will find it and I will send it in Slack or something. That kind of trains your eye to see kerning. So I am not good at kerning. I will just be transparent about that. But I can see that I kind of want my E to be right about there. So there's my DE. Really easy to spell things wrong when you're doing this. You just pay close attention. Here's my S.
So for your sketches, you don't need to like color them in?
No. No. No use in spending the time doing that when it's not the final output, right? Now, if there's one that you are particularly keen about, you can totally do that. Now, I also encourage you guys, I'm being a little bit simplistic here, right? I'm not really getting creative or anything like that. I'm kind of just tracing letters at this point. I really encourage you guys to get creative. Think outside the box. Try to make something like Herb Liebelin, right? Try to use typography as a narrative. What does design through the decades mean? How can I convey that through typography? Almost alone. Maybe there's an emblem or something that goes along with it. I think that's okay. But focus on the typography more than anything. Yeah.
Do I need to follow like a specific rule or I can go nuts?
Go nuts.
Okay.
Yeah. Gloves are off, man.
And how big is the logo? How big is it gonna be or how small is it?
So this logo is going to go on the cover of your guys' magazine that you're going to be doing in Module 4. Okay. So, I mean, I'm going to bring in some excuse me, apparently I'm a teenager again. I'm going to bring in some magazine covers or whole magazines later this week. That way you can kind of get an idea for that layout structure. Is that helpful? Yeah. Okay. So, I mean, a decent size. This is a fun one. There's a G in here. Also, as you guys are doing this, I kind of want you to like pay some close attention to the anatomy of your typography. And especially the difference between the two different, I mean, really, you're going to be working with several different typefaces, but pay attention as you change your typeface. Pay attention to some of the anatomy anomalies, right? Is the G double story or single story? Does its counter spaces, are they angled, or are they, do they have an axis or no axis, right? Pay attention to some of those things and just really see how different each typeface is, right? And then imagine spending your entire life doing nothing but this. Okay, I think you guys sort of get the picture. Yes? Do I need to keep going here? Any questions? A couple of tips. Remember these pencils that I advised you guys to get in the syllabus? The trick here is find a pencil with a really fine point. If you did get the kit that I recommended, I'm actually not using the finest tip here. This one is much finer, and you can kind of hold them together and see quite the difference. This one's, I don't know, maybe a third larger than this one. It's a lot easier, although if you're using one of these finer points, be mindful not to put too much pressure on it, or you're just going to get real frustrated about how quickly it snaps. So finer tip, often helpful. Don't erase, just start over. Honestly, it's going to save you time, it's going to save you frustration. If you sit there and erase, it's just going to smudge. So if you do happen to make a mistake that you're unpleased with, oftentimes it's correctable if you just kind of spend a little bit of time going back over. This counter in this E is a little bit bolder than I would like it to be. That's not detrimental as long as you sort of take mental note of that. I think you guys get the picture, yeah? Let's see, what am I missing here? Any questions on that so far? Spend some time with this, yeah.
Can we use more than two typefaces?
In one logo, I would recommend not. But in your sets of logos, absolutely, you should.
Can I ask?
Yeah.
For example, let's say I want to make a really long T.
That's a good
How
question.
should I trace?
So if you guys want to modify the typography, you kind of have to color outside the lines a little bit. And so if I were in that situation and I wanted to extend a T, it gets awfully mathematical awfully quickly. I would recommend save some of that mathematics for Illustrator. But for example, it's not overly difficult to, especially with the T. Other letters get much, much more difficult. Let me choose one that's a little larger here. You guys see that guy? Okay. So here, for example, you know what, I'm just gonna color outside the lines here. I would recommend start at the top. And this is specific for a T. Every letter I would start at a different spot. You kind of have to look at the construction of the letter to determine what might be the best route. Here, we know it's fairly symmetrical, right? So I would start with the serif here. And I would stop before I get to the middle. And then I would grab my ruler. And I would sort of determine how much longer I want it to be. Maybe I want it to be that long. That's a little severe. But it could work. And then I'll come over on this side and I'll sort of line it up. So there's that. And then from there, you sort of have to do the measurements. We are at, oh wow, that was unintentional. We're at 1.5 inches. So I'll just mark the center there, like that. And I'll come down and I'll reference how wide my T is. Down here, and my T is more or less a 1/2 inch wide. And the stem of that T is about, might be better to do centimeters on this one. Oh no, this ruler doesn't have centimeters.
Well, I got the point.
Well, now I want to do it.
That's your one.
Okay, here we are. Oh geez, we're off the scale. Well, that's just maddeningly unhelpful. There we go, okay. There's a little bit of meticulous activity that happens. You do this kind of stuff?
You covering the camera.
So I just measured the stem of the T and sort of plotted out where I wanted it there. Then I can come down and I can line that marking up with the stem. And I can then go and fill it in. Now, T's are very, very forgiving. If this were me, depending on the construction of what I was trying to do, I would actually opt to offset the stem because I would imagine just the way that I know that I like to design, I would probably want to nest some other letters underneath this crossbar at the top. So I was being a little overly meticulous there to show how I would keep sort of the symmetry, but this is why erasers should not be a part of any design toolkit, is because it's probably going to be faster for me to just remake this, but I'm gonna try. Ooh, that's actually a good eraser. That's rare. So then I would just come back down, and knowing me, I would also probably extend the stem of the T. Just
We freehand part of the letter? Like for example, like
you
little like.
can if you trust. So that would be
Or we would have to steal it from, to take it from a different font.
If you want to do that, I would recommend going back to Michael's and investing in what are called French curves. French curves are what we would use to create those swashes that I think you're talking about.
Yeah. So some G has like very crazy tail.
Yeah.
Yeah, so if you wanted to extend that tail, you would want one of those French curves in order to do that. You could freehand it, but I really want, what I'm trying to do here is get you guys to be really nuanced about the typography. I think I would allow some freehanding as long as it's just flourishes and not the actual typography.
Okay.
So
The decorations.
correct, yep. Those there are really two names for those swashes that you would see coming off of
Are they font or are they decoration?
something like that. There's two names for that. It's either called a flourish or a swash. Flourish or swash. So coming back to the T here, I would probably do that. And then I would also come over to a pretty large H, like this guy here. And then I would line that H up to the baseline. Something like that. And then if I were, I don't know, creating a title card. There we go. That actually makes a pretty cool if you ask me.
Yeah.
But think about that, right? So there are ways that you can manipulate the typography. You want to respect the typography and what it was intended for, but you can also manipulate it in ways that serve the design intent that you're hoping. Yeah.
Do I have to be exact with the millimeters and with the measurements?
No. No.
I can wing it a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, do what feels right, you know? What I don't want is just any hand lettered typography per se. Any other questions on this? Yeah.
So we're supposed to print these out ourselves for the fonts that we want to use, for each of the logos that we want to create.
Correct. So find 5 to 7 fonts that you like. I would really encourage you guys, as you guys are looking for fonts, try to find pairings that would serve your designer or artist that you wrote about and their style.
Okay.
Right? So if you have Art Nouveau, something like the botanist here, that would be a great typeface for Art Nouveau. But also, if you did an entire logo in this, it would be a little overbearing, right? So maybe you pair it with something like that, right? You've got these mimicked, rounded edges. Nothing's quite hard on this. So just search through Adobe Fonts, search through Google Fonts, find things that work. And then maybe also find something that is totally in another direction, right? I've learned that some of my best designs come when I find something that I feel looks really close first, close to the design intent, and then I go and I make something just way out in left field, something the client's gonna look at and be like, what the hell are you doing? Kind of get it out of your system, and then design sort of what was being asked for.
In the middle between those two kinds.
Yeah, kind of. Watch your eyes. I've learned that that's kind of the best way to go about design work, is just find that happy middle. Cool?
So we can use any font in the Adobe.
Do you know what I mean?
Or any font in general.
I mean, pick good fonts. I don't
Like, I'm just saying, like, any fonts from there, it's okay to use, right?
Yes, I mean, still don't use Comic Sans.
No.
Still-
I still value my life.
Good. Yeah, just you guys at this point know what good fonts are. Also, think about this as I genuinely hope that this is a project that you guys care enough about that you would put it in your portfolio. So also keep in mind that employers care about fonts, right? Or typefaces, I should say. So just be mindful as you're selecting that you're looking for some of those idiosyncrasies and that the typeface sort of matches the mood of what it is that you're writing about, right? Think about as you guys are designing this logo, not just how could you design for design through the decades, but how could you design it in a way that your chosen designer or artist would maybe emulate, right?
For design for decades, do we have to have every letter, or can we
I think you could. I would accept an acronym if that makes sense for the designer that you.
No, like for example, I was giving an example. Instead of design versus DSIG, can it be DSIG?
I think that's fine if it makes sense for your artist to design. And this is where I want you guys to start thinking about defending your designs a little bit. Because it's not just you presenting the work. How do you create a defense for your design?
Can we do something like
So the question was, could you create a logo that sort of abbreviates the word design, like DSG or something like that? And it's like, you can do whatever you want, as long as you have a good defense. When I say a good defense, it's not just, well, I made it everything, right?
So the thing that you can abbreviate some of them, and folks might want to say that.
Yeah. I don't want to put restrictions on this other than that I want you guys to pay attention to the typography. Guys, I also want to be clear, if your designer or artist is not American, it doesn't need to be written in English. So if you have a German designer, could you write design through the decades in German?
Well, but then some languages
In some languages it is harder. If you have a Chinese designer, go figure out Mandarin.
so even
Absolutely. No limitations, gloves are off.
maybe I will. Maybe I like this.
All right. Have a good day online.
Maybe I will use this. So you don't like home, like, or use the one you for
What do you mean?
we made some of the stuff like this.
Sort of. That one's a little bit different. That's your type hierarchy. So those are literally just me typing out ABC in different sizes. Here's what that looks like. So I just did each one over. We're just printing it out.
I
So
don't.
So, yeah, so I can do myself, like, I print them out.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So these are just here because I have them. I would just make some that fit your design.
The thing is, I don't have.
No, you can just pick, I printed it out so that there were different sizes. Combine different sizes, right? So really, it's up to you.
Okay.
Cool.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I wonder what you want.
Because I want you to get an idea of what it's like to space it out yourself. I want there to be something like
I'll have to use the John with 10 again.
making that a lot.
this is what
Just not saying, don't just like type it out. I would actually do the whole alphabet.
I
Maybe
used to
even
do it
some
on my
words.
iPad.
Root
use that. To make that.
Oh, yeah, that's.
Toughest one is
You just put a white bar on top of your. Yeah. It's just, all of them actually. That was because those typefaces are white. Benny is basically in between, like it's like semi-gold. Yeah. If you want to do, you want to see illustrator. I don't know if you can take a scale. I have a scale now.
Yeah, I was scared of my own, but we're not.
You're gonna have to narrow that bigger so like really big outside. Just the whole about that. We're gonna do it together. Because we need like all the ideas of C-sharp, right? That's not how
You're a library,
totally understand.
Because you have
I tried to explore. I thought it was so I would say that I think there's a lot more fonts that we can work with.
Yeah. Like that.
Like this is fine.
So yeah, so I was like design like this and like
Wherever your desktop is, wherever you want to do it.
yeah, I have a lot of
But this? It's not. You do whatever you want.
Surely at the average.
great thing.
Professor, do you have something to
Sorry. No, you can keep it. You're not keeping whatever you
So
want.
they comes in like
Just tomorrow, wait if you want to use that.
I know.
Saying it for the sake of like, not really like
Yeah.
Where did this go? When was this taken away?
I feel like they don't know that. But somehow you actually don't. I'm from my way.
I don't think it matters. Nice or
I actually used to support
Maybe this is practice, if you make it in the fucking thing.
I feel it. Dude, I have to print any designs. But no, I don't think it's big. I can make it 4 times.
Yeah, but I'm messy.
I mean,
So I need like, yeah, I need like 3 pieces.
three. Right? that particular one paragraph. So that's why I'm trying to see if I can.
I'm not doing it a lot.
Wow.
See my No, I don't know. I'm trying to do something more with the words than what it actually says. Sometimes through the decades, I'm trying to make it like literally. Yeah. I'm just making it very literal. Yeah, that's what it says.
That's what I was.
And then the other idea that I had was to use different typefaces which go like through the decades.
Wow.
You've been talking to.
Wait, like some ideas.
I was thinking to use a different type of.
Yeah, I was gonna do it hierarchically, like as it came out. So like you go start from older fonts and you come towards newer fonts. So like it's that. You gotta say it.
I have some idea what I want to do as my artist. Low key.
That's how you looked at it.
Why?
He explained that was the reason why he took the name, bro.
I have no idea. Maybe that's my guy. And it's only an invention. I started out to move this godfather of
What?
the godfather of like
So brand is the brand
sorry? Yeah.
I choose someone because I did not research that.
I mean, I had fun with it. Like I wrote a good article on Western messages. At least I'm a storyteller, not an academic.
Now they did the essay in the undergrad. So they're saying, I'm using the same source that you used.
Yeah.
Go through.
That is smart.
Like,
Never see how you You'll have to put it into like cells, change it to black, and then once you put it down, you'll get a different text.
Did you start your writing?
Yeah, so all of them.
Well, they are, yeah. Technically, yes.
Have I written anything? No.
I don't remember the original.
I usually do it.
So I'm gonna sense what I'm gonna write. And then that kind of takes.
I do like heading. I try to build like right now. I want to make sure it's select the text and then change it because otherwise you're gonna change the whole sentence. Yeah, that's the outline. That's what I meant by outline. Oh.
Hello. How are you?
So that's a practice. Wow. No, it's back.
So my attitude was not really last week. So when this was out of time.
Well, you gotta walk like this.
I'm not walking like this.
You're good, bro. Just to make sure you're.
It breaks it away. I'm gonna go here. What do you want to do? Levitate?
Why does it make sense?
I don't like sandals, man. Stink. No.
Okay, props. Make your own props. The game with props. Come on. Instead of circles, you make like stars, triangles. Close your voice, bro.
That's why you eat some middle fingers.
Oh yeah, there we go. Oh, beautiful.
You're welcome to.
Yeah, but like I feel like
What about like boots?
I do love boots. I would do boots, but like bowling can. What's called? And it's
Yeah, you could. I would say
like,
focus on the.
you know the I was thinking like all by boots, bro. Oh yeah. Those giving you one. I mean, they were by. One of the it's like it's a giant ass like it looks like cartoon feet. Yeah. Was it Adam Boy? Astro Boy. Astro Boy. You know and like that kid.
you have that.
You make that yellow. And then you wear it.
I need to have clothes to match.
Oh, come on, bro.
Maybe. So I need to.
I don't care.
Yeah, there you go. Astro Boy. So here it is, really quick.
That's like a.
This. Go to your file.
Give me back.
There you go. Package. Save it where you go for,
Looks like it's 7.
Yep, fine.
Yes.
Okay,
Oh.
and then go there.
And she's like, it's the only thing I just didn't do the.
So that, yep, that's it. What packaging does is it takes all of, anything that you've used to make that document, and it puts it all in one spot. So your fonts, any links, and when I say links, that's reference to like images or assets. And then as well as your InDesign file, as well as PDF, and puts it all in one.
She tried to explain it to me.
So from the higher level folder, if you go back one,
It didn't make sense.
you can right click on that folder, the 2 fingers, yep, and then yeah, they call it compress. Yep, there you go.
Thank you.
You bet.
Can I also get a sheet actually?
Please, go ahead. I'm still zooming.